Guys, I'm currently in Penkridge, and this is a story about a horrendous car crash that happened in the 60s. Anyway, let's get into it, gang.
On Sunday the 18th of March 1962, three young people from Penkridge were involved in a fatal accident on the main Stafford-to-Wolverhampton road. They were travelling in a new white Jaguar E-type sports car which belonged to the father of the youngest boy and had been taken without his permission. The three occupants were James Edward Straiton, aged 14, of Cannock Road in Penkridge, David Thomas Richards, aged 17, of Market Street, and Lawrence Neil Cecil, aged 18, of Francis Green Lane. The E-type belonged to James's father, Edward Straiton, otherwise known as Eddie, the TV vet. He had a veterinary surgery in Penkridge. On the Sunday of the accident, Eddie left the ignition key inside the Jag, because he believed that his wife might need to drive the short distance from their home to the neighbouring vets. The three young men were at the hospital helping to clean it, but Eddie had not given them permission to take the E-type onto the road. James did have some previous experience of driving vehicles. His father told the later inquest that James had learned to operate different types of vehicles on a farm and had driven the Jaguar once or twice within the grounds of the vets. On previous occasions, Eddie had allowed the young men to borrow a Land Rover to attend motorcycle scrambling meetings, but only when there was a qualified driver among them. He never shouted out loud that James couldn't borrow the Jag, because he'd never considered that his son or either of his friends might take it onto a public road. The E-type had been launched only the previous year, in 1961, and was one of the most advanced and powerful production cars available at the time. It was capable of reaching approximately 150 miles an hour, while evidence given at the inquest said it could accelerate from a standstill to 100 miles per hour in around 16 seconds. After taking the car, the three friends drove from Penkridge towards the roundabout at Gailey, turned around and began travelling back towards the village. Their complete journey was estimated to have covered only 3 or 4 miles. A number of people saw the white Jag while it was on the road. Michael Allen, of Farm Estate in Penkridge, was driving at approximately 45 miles an hour when the E-type suddenly overtook him. He estimated that it was travelling at around 80 miles per hour. John Patterson, a passenger in Mr. Allen's car, also saw the Jag pass and described it as travelling at a very fast speed, possibly more than 80 miles an hour. Another witness was John Hill, a farmer from Market Street in Penkridge. Mr. Hill was travelling towards the Gailey roundabout when he saw the Jaguar approaching at what he described as a terrific speed. He said the car looked like a runaway horse and identified Lawrence Cecil as the person behind the wheel. Lawrence was 18, worked as a garage mechanic, and was the only one of the three old enough to hold a driving licence. However, James's father did not believe that Lawrence was experienced enough to control a car as powerful as the E-type. The earliest newspaper reports that the accident happened on a clearway section of the Stafford-to-Wolverhampton road. The Jaguar had just overtaken 2 vehicles when it struck the kerb, swung towards the outside of the road and moved onto the grass verge. It then began to overturn. The report published on the 19th of March stated that the car somersaulted nose to tail 4 times, tore through a hedge and a wooden fence, and finally came to rest in a field. The Jag was almost completely destroyed and was left in a tangled, twisted mass of metal. Its bonnet had been torn away during the accident and was found approximately 100 yards from the wreckage, lying on the opposite side of the road. All 3 occupants were thrown from the car. James Edward Straiton and David Thomas Richards were killed at the scene, while Lawrence Neil Cecil was taken to Stafford Infirmary, where he later died from his injuries. The first newspaper account stated that it was not yet known who had been driving. Further information emerged when the inquest was held at Cannock on Thursday the 22nd of March 1962. The hearing was conducted by the Stafford District Coroner, Kenneth Braille Hartnell, and included evidence from the boys' families, the motorists who had seen the Jag and the doctors who had examined the victims. John Hill told the inquest that he'd seen Lawrence Cecil behind the wheel while the Jag was travelling towards the Gailey roundabout. The coroner considered it reasonable to assume Lawrence remained the driver on the return journey, as it appeared unlikely that the 3 friends would have stopped and exchanged places during such a short trip. Although this evidence identified Lawrence as the likely driver, the precise reason the Jag went out of control could not be established conclusively. Dr. Pitt gave evidence about the injuries suffered by David Richards. David had sustained a broken sternum, an injury which could sometimes be caused by the impact of a steering wheel against a person's chest. However, the doctor made it clear that David's injury could have also resulted from another impact during the violent accident. The injury didn't prove that David had been driving and did not outweigh the eyewitness evidence placing Lawrence behind the wheel. After hearing the available evidence, the jury returned verdicts of accidental death on James, David and Lawrence. The coroner then spoke about the speed and performance of the Jag, reminding the jury that it was capable of reaching 150 miles an hour and accelerating from 0 to 100 in approximately 16 seconds. He compared access to such a powerful car with access to a weapon, saying a car like that's like a gun. A car like that with the ignition key left in is like a loaded gun. Those words were used in newspaper headlines reporting the outcome of the inquest. The coroner described the accident as a warning to parents. He said that it was natural that young people would be tempted to drive cars and motorcycles, and that parents had to consider what precautions were necessary when the children were not sufficiently experienced to operate on. Edward Straiton explained why the ignition key had been left in the E-type. He expected his wife to use the Jag if she needed to travel between the house and the vets. Had she taken the car, she would have also taken its key, but instead it remained there when the three friends decided to take the vehicle. The accident affected three families from Penkridge. James was the youngest person in the car and the son of its owner. David was 17 and worked as a fitter engineer, while Lawrence was 18 and worked as a garage mechanic. Following the accident, the three were buried together at St Michael and All Angels in Penkridge. The headstones remain there today, recording the names and ages of the three young people who lost their lives. Edward Straiton continued working as a surgeon at the vets and later became known to a much wider audience. Usually referred to in the press as Eddie Straiton, he gained recognition as the TV vet and appeared in broadcasts on the Jimmy Young programme. Following the death of his wife Lorraine, Eddie married Penny, who had previously worked as his personal secretary in the vets in Penkridge. They married approximately 1 year after Lorraine's death. 6 years into that marriage, Eddie and Penny announced that they were expecting a child. Eddie was 71 years old at the time and Penny was 38. With their baby expected to be born in July, the couple lived mainly in Mallorca, but also maintained a home near Stone in Staffordshire. They shared the news with friends during a visit to Penkridge, and the resulting newspaper article described Eddie as a grandfather who was preparing to become a father again. The events of March 1962 remain part of the Straiton family's history and part of the history of Penkridge. The accident occurred during a journey of no more than a few miles. The white Jag travelled from Penkridge towards Gailey, turned around and began heading back towards the village. Witnesses saw it travelling at approximately 80 miles per hour before it struck the kerb, left the road, overturned 4 times and came to rest in a field. James Edward Straiton died at the age of 14. David Thomas Richards at the age of 17, and Lawrence Neil Cecil at the age of 18. All three lived in Penkridge, and all three were laid to rest there together. The headstones now provide a permanent record of the 3 lives lost on Sunday the 18th of March 1962. So rest in peace, the boys.